The October 2021 regular meeting of the Holland City Council. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd. Peters. Garcia.
Here.
Trethewey.
Here.
Arnshorst.
Here.
Corbin. Hoekstra.
Here.
Raymond.
Here.
Mayor Box.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. We're going to begin this evening's meeting as we have for many years, first with an opening prayer this evening by our city manager, Keith Van Beek, followed immediately by the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you would like to, we would ask that you would join us. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you. And for those who are so inclined, please join me in prayer. Father God, thank you for this day. Thank you for leaders who step into these positions, who are willing to run for these positions. We ask that you grant them wisdom. Thank you for the employees that carry out the work of the city and the Board of Public Works. We ask for safety. We ask for grace. We ask for abilities for them to perform services on behalf of this community. For our citizens and our visitors, we ask for peace. We ask for prosperity. We ask for everything that they stand in need of. Lord, bless us in this evening as we do the business of the city. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on our agenda are our consent agenda items. These are items that are considered to be fairly routine, and they have been reviewed by council members as part of our packet. They will be enacted with one motion unless a member of the public or a member of council asks to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed in its normal place on the regular agenda. But before we ask for that, Kathy, would you please review the consent agenda for us?
4A, absences excused, Councilmember Byrd. 4B, approval of minutes. October 6, 2021 regular meeting and October 13th, 2021 study session. 4C, oaths of office. 4D, written petitions and communications. Tax abatement PA 198, JR Automation Technologies, LLC, 701 Waverly Road. 4E, Holland Board of Public Works, declaration of surplus material. 4F, Holland Board of Public Works, bill of sale and utility easement at Black River Flats. 4G, Holland Board of Public Works, bill of sale and utility easement at Interchange Drive. 4H, Holland Board of Public Works, Cherry Walk Lift Station rehabilitation. 4I, Holland Board of Public Works, hybrid bucket trucks purchase. 4J, City Clerk claims filed against the city. 4K, purchasing, replacement security camera solution. 4L, management administrative services, human resources, employee service credit purchase, MERS defined pension plan. 4M, human resources, 2021 health insurance rate plans. 4N, management administrative services, human resources, recreation position reclassification.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Is there any member of the public who would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Seeing none, council, any member who would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? And seeing none there either, what is the pleasure of council in regard to the consent agenda?
Motion to adopt agenda as presented.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Hoekstra. Any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Peters. Yes. Garcia.
Yes.
Trethewey.
Yes.
Arnshorst.
Yes.
Corbin. Yes. Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Next is our public comment period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council. We do this at each and every one of our public meetings as part of the Open Meetings Act in the state of Michigan. During our regular meetings, we allow for 5 minutes for any member of the public. Please note that this is one-way communication. This is an opportunity for you to communicate with council on any subject that you would like to, other than something for which there is already a public hearing scheduled during the council meeting, and we do have some public hearings on some particular issues tonight. But anything else is fair game. But we do not engage in conversation. We do not answer questions at this point. You'll notice that there are 3 lights on the dais in front of me. There's a red light, a yellow light, and a green light. Green light means you're doing well on time. Yellow light means you have 1 minute left, and the red light means that your time has expired, and we are very strict about that. So with that, is there any member of the public who would like to address council at this time? Yeah, please come forward, state your name and address for the record if you would.
Zeke De La Rosa, 45 Bellwood Drive. I've been here before you a couple times to see if City Hall can look into playground equipment for children with disabilities. A month ago, I took the kids out to Silver Lake, and Maya wanted to play at the park and the playground equipment. Well, you look at the playground equipment, it was too dangerous for her. She couldn't play on it. Now, again, I've said all children should have the right to play, regardless if they're able, disabled, whatnot. And we hear politicians say about diversity and inclusiveness, but there's a part that you guys, there's children that you guys are leaving by the wayside. I want to see parks that have equipment for a child to put a wheelchair on a swing. And Mr. Mayor, you told me, well, the cost is too high. And here we got people building low income housing, they get tax breaks. The guy doesn't even want to pay taxes, I believe, he just wants to pay a fee. And then Habitat for Humanity, you wanted to give them money back. That's what I read in the Sentinel. But we leave this small population with nothing. And all children, and I keep repeating myself, all children should have the right to play. They should have a safe playground where they can enjoy themselves just as any normal children. I wanted to see the city look into playground equipment so that all children have the same opportunity and the fair chance to play. My niece, she's blind. All right, and it's hard to tell her that when I saw that playground that it was too dangerous for her. All our parks are made for children that are normal. We leave this section of children behind. And I'm tired to tell her no. And I want the city to look into adding equipment to our parks that disabled children, whether blind, wheelchair, whatever, that they have a chance to grow up as normal as they can, even though normal ain't normal to us. But all children should have the right to play, to go enjoy our parks. But they can't because the parks aren't made for them. And so I'm looking to see if the city can look into playground equipment that they can use. And that's all I'm asking. I mean, they don't have to reconfigure the whole park. Just put equipment that they can use and play like a normal child. It's tough raising a child that's blind. It's tough raising a child that's in a wheelchair. It's just tough, and it's hard. It breaks your heart to tell them you can't use that because it's too dangerous. And like I said, most of our parks are well thought of, but they leave a section of our society behind. And it seems like, I don't know, they don't care about them. But they're kids, and kids should have the right to be kids. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, Ann Henriksen, Zealand. In last week's study session, I made a public declaration. Critical race theory is at City of Holland's door and has already entered Hope College in debate form. All are welcome here in Holland is often spoken, but the truth is there is an intolerant, dissident voice and temperament that is indirectly hidden in the diversity, equity, and inclusion flagship. The LGBT ordinance that was passed a year ago was purposed to protect all who live here, but the critical race theory has been brewing under the surface of this ordinance. It is mean-spirited. This scholarly framework, developed in the 70s by academics, argues white supremacies by promulgating racial disparities through laws and policies. Holland Sentinel, August 1, 21, rooted in misconceptions by Lobo and Boatman. According to the Sentinel article, the CRT is intensified due to the shocking death of George Floyd. I would like to remind the City of Holland Council of May 25, 2020, the day of George Floyd's last breath. At the end of the council meeting, Councilman Byrd had a closing statement commending the Holland police officers for their professionalism in the line of duty, world class. Then he emotionally broke down, recalling what he saw on television of police brutality in Minnesota, as did all our nations as we mourn this tragedy. Prior to this, in the meeting, the council had been presented with the LGBT ordinance written and suggested by the Michigan Civil Rights Commission in Lansing. On June 8th, I wrote to each council person individually a letter asking that they respect their fellow councilman Quincy Byrd's heartfelt response. Also to honor our devastated citizens who gathered to peacefully demonstrate. The Holland Police Department assisted in protecting this solemn demonstration on Unity Bridge. In my letter, there was a plea to table the LGBT ordinance for now and commit to doing everything possible in our community to address racism. I was saddened to think that the LGBT ordinance campaign promises of council members took precedence over pursuing healing racism with all that we have available within our borders. I often thought of the organizers of the peaceful demonstration now, wonder if their concerns had fallen on deaf ears and their efforts were meaningless. On June 17, 2020, I spoke at the City Council on racism and my individual letter to each council person. Only Mayor Box responded with a short comment. That neglect has produced a vicious cancer of sorts, critical race theory. Taryn McZee, Director of Equity and Inclusion of Holland Public Schools, describes critical race theory as not white shaming, but it is saying racism is a system. Sentinel. That is not what I encountered last week with a Holland citizen. When I questioned him, did he mean the 1619 project was the same as critical race theory? He agreed that it was the same. He proceeded to complain that the statue in Ellendale depicting a Union soldier and slave child at his feet should be demolished. I asked if Van Ralte's statue should be taken down too. He is white. He was. He informed me that after the Native Americans left their village to travel north, leaving their belongings behind, the white Dutch immigrants confiscated their possessions. I've read the history, and that is not the complete account. Separation of church and state mindset has brought us to this place in Holland. No God in government, no government in God. Critical race theory, not socialism, Marxism. May I make a few suggestions? There is a seminar this Friday and Saturday at Community Church in Zeeland. Critical race theory, social justice, and the gospel. I have included the information in this packet for you. I have copied the letter I sent to the council last June 2020. I will give you the grace, council, that during COVID and the mandates, it might have been overlooked. It is my hope that you will finally take heed. It is not too late to begin the hard work attacking racism before the damaging critical race
Mr.
theory
Mayor, that's 5
infiltrates.
minutes.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Yes, please come forward.
Ashby, 967 Songbird Lane.
Bob, can you do that for us one more time? You weren't quite up to the microphone yet. We just want to make sure people at home can hear you too.
Bob
Thanks, Bob.
Ashby, 967 Songbird Lane. Although someone tried to kick in my door the other night, so I'm not sure I need the address out there anymore. There's a price to pay when we give up the Judeo-Christian heritage that made both this community and our nation what it is during its most prosperous times. I have realized that, in large part, the man-made climate emergency movement actually fits quite nicely into the current cancellation campaigns. Here's what I mean. First, from a scientific perspective, it has long been common knowledge that for decades, the UNIPCC systematically refuses to let dissenting scientists participate in the agency. The participants are carefully chosen from only those who share the IPCC's methodologies and data sources. It is also common knowledge, common practice, that in scientific journals, rejections happen to submissions for peer review and publication which do not comport with the IPCC's consensus standards. In the age of social and mass media control, new critical information is being systematically suppressed and as misinformation, and dissenters are pejoratively labeled as climate deniers who care nothing about the environment and are blind to the natural climate processes, even if verified findings manage to get past the consensus roadblocks. The result is that entire programs and initiatives are based on a house of cards. The levers, goals, and targets used to figure out how to implement the climatist agenda are based in large part on mythology. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the same basis on which the CEP rests its recommendations. But there is a far graver level of denial going on, and this is my main point. Anyone who professes to believe that in some fashion this is a creation of a living God understands that our world is ultimately upheld by His mighty power. I submit that if that is true, there is no human power or level of environmental sin that can topple His created order or overpower His sovereign rule. As a matter of fact, the allegiance to man-made climate claims exhibit a profound mistrust of the power that we cannot even think of or imagine. In essence, it is to accuse God of abandoning His throne in order to place men on the throne of creation in order to save the world by 2050. In the final analysis, this is a religious situation. Devotion to the power of man over God's wise counsel is the height of arrogance because it deems God insufficient. Maybe it's time to expose the religious zeal of climate alarmism. As for human flourishing, man is not dependent on the environment around him to thrive. He flourishes in spite of climate, not because of it, and has contentedly done so in the harshest of conditions. Jesus made it clear that flourishing begins in the heart and rests solely in the presence of God and trust in His activity, regardless of the air temperature around you or any disaster that He allows to befall you. It is not our job to be saviors of the planet. That's God's job. It has already been done. It is our job to enjoy its blessings of every kind, including every one of her resources as they have been bestowed on us. And just for context, from the scientific part, some headlines. NASA satellite data support shockingly large carbon dioxide fertilization effect in the atmosphere. Observations at research station South Pole's cold season was the coldest on record so far. The UN claims that climate truth is impossible. The non-governmental International Panel on Climate Change, the NIPCC, has summarized thousands of studies from peer-reviewed scientific journals that either completely refute or cast serious doubts on the IPCC's science. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period. Next item on our agenda, number 7, special order of the day, public hearings, 7A, West Michigan Airport Authority, declaring surplus property parcel K. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This item, as several of these that are coming up here soon have been before you already. Mr. Van Dyken is here to answer more questions if you have them, and I know that under public comment, the West Michigan Airport Director would like to say a few words also. By way of recap, what you're being asked to do here is a 17.7 acre parcel that has gone through the Airport Authority review that includes 2 council members, is being recommended to be declared as surplus property with the expectation that it would be added to the economic development potential here in the city. All the funds that are related to this parcel were initially used with federal funds and would be returned as such. So what's before you is not only then the public hearing, but also the motion and resolution that would execute such declaration as this being surplus property.
All right.
And if you have further questions, certainly Matt can go into more detail if you would like more detail.
All right. Any questions for staff from council before I open the public hearing? No, seeing none. All right. So I will now open the public hearing on this matter. If there's any member of the public who would like to address council in regard to this particular item, now is your opportunity to do so. And again, we have the same 5-minute limit here that we do under our regular public comment period. Good evening, and would you please state your name and address for the record?
Aaron Thalenwood, Director of West Michigan Regional Airport Authority, 5824 Walnut Ridge Drive, Southwest in Wyoming, Michigan. Sorry, I'm not local. I just want to take a moment to address you, Mr. Mayor, City Council, express the appreciation on behalf of the Airport Authority Board for your efforts in supporting this effort. This has been a project that's been long in the making. It was shepherded by my predecessor, Greg Robinson, and I luckily get to carry it to fruition. If it wasn't for the ongoing support of both the City of Holland as well as our other member communities, these sort of initiatives wouldn't even be possible, so we're thankful every day for your ongoing support. This land release will provide strategic support through revenues derived to help further initiatives of the Airport Authority and to drive economic activity at the airport as well as in the surrounding region. So on behalf of the Airport Authority Board, thank you very much for helping us move this forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address council in regard to this particular item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing in regard to this. And what is the pleasure of council in regard to item 7A?
Move we approve the recommendation.
Moved by Hoekstra, is there support?
Support.
Support by Aaronsource. Any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin. Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters, Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Item 7B, Lakeshore Habitat for Humanity Incorporated and Jubilee Ministries Incorporated request to approve brownfield plan for 60 East 40th Avenue. Yes, Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, so as part of the leadership team at Lakeshore Habitat for Humanity, I'd like to recuse myself from this item.
All right, I believe we need a motion in that regard, don't we?
So moved.
All right, moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
There's support by Hoekstra. Do we need to do a roll call on this, Ron, or do we just do a voice vote on this?
Should do a roll call on it.
Roll call. All right, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin. Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters. Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, you are recused from this item, and we will see you back for the next one. All right, Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. This item was presented to you along with the next one that's going to be on the agenda at a study session in August 11. And it was a project describing what Lakeshore Habitat for Humanity and Jubilee have been working on and proceeding with at 60th East 40th Avenue. It's a 3.25 acre parcel, and it's being turned into 10 single-family homes. What this brownfield plan does that we're recommending to be approved, was also recommended by the Brownfield Development Board. And what it does, and we can go into more detail, but basically what it does is it allows for tax capture to go back to support eligible activities as defined under the State Brownfield Act. That makes and aligns with the goal of council as providing more affordable housing opportunities in the city, and in this case, ownership opportunities. We do have representatives from the requesting organization here tonight, and I think it'd be appropriate to give the floor to them to add anything they would like to for council and for the public also to know with this request.
All right.
So, gentlemen. Surprise.
Yep. And of course, yeah, please state your name and address for the record, and make sure that when you're speaking, you're up at the microphone so that people who are watching at home have the opportunity to hear you as well.
All right. Steve Gross, 147 West 12th. I'm Executive Director for Jubilee Ministries. And just briefly, I was at the site today. Construction's going well. We are doing a new method of construction for Jubilee, where we're doing some modular homes that are really cool construction that will save us some time and money in order to keep the prices down for folks. We've got 5 people lined up to buy. There's a real backlog for people in this price range that they have good jobs. They just can't afford to live in our community, and we need to provide more ownership opportunities for them. So I'll let Don and Jared fill in any gaps.
Don Wilkinson, 3949 Tallgrass East. I'm Executive Director of Lakeshore Habitat. Just want to state for you guys to understand that both entities being nonprofits, we don't stand to gain anything by doing this. This just lowers the cost of the housing for the 10 residents that will be living there. So this is a really big boost to them, serving a population that makes between 30 and 120% of the area median income. So that's why we're asking for it.
Jared Belka with Warner Norcross. Depends on where I'm working. I could give you an address. One's here in Holland. So thank you for the opportunity tonight. And I just wanted to add a couple things. First and foremost, thank city staff. This was a very long process. This is something that's gaining traction throughout the state, utilizing this approach with the state land bank. But city staff was very progressive in using this approach to address the housing needs. And the housing, these particular homes are aimed to deliver 30 to 120% AMI. So this tool, as Don said, is one that can help them deliver affordable housing to residents. So with that, we'll open it up for any questions, but thank you again.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council? I think that you guys did a great job. Thank you, appreciate it. I will now open the public hearing in regard to item 7B. Is there anyone here who would like to address council in regard to this particular item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And what is the pleasure of council?
I'll make this one short. Motion to adopt recommendation.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Oh, goodness. I think I'll give that one to, I'm going to give it to Lynn down at the end. All right, give it to Raymond at the end. Is there any discussion?
One thing.
Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead,
Mayor.
Scott.
Yeah, so I don't know how long Mr. Del Rosa will be staying this evening, but I just want to bring one point to bear is that just because we're doing this doesn't mean that we're going to forget about other projects that are priority for the city. We certainly want to make our parks more accessible. And I know many of my board members, my colleagues have had many discussions about that, and we're trying to find ways to do it. Our Parks Department's working very hard at making sure that happens. But I just want to give you some reassurance. We're working on it, but there's a number of projects that are a need in the city. Housing is one of those. And we have a really fine program here, or programs, excuse me, housing programs here in the city. that are helping us achieve that. And if this is a way that we can help them achieve getting more people into affordable housing, I really want to support that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Any other comments from council? Yes, Dave.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions over the years about the need for affordable, what's called affordable housing, and we've made it priorities. Year after year, people say, well, you're with the city, why don't you build more affordable housing? And the fact is, we don't build housing. We can, some of us at least, can plant tulips, but that's about the end of it. So personally, it's a little frustrating, to engage this subject and not have a lot of things that we can use to affect the situation. But this is one of those tools we have in our toolbox, few tools, but one of those that we can take advantage of to make these projects more doable. Frankly, the cost of building, I think most would agree, is the greatest obstacle to making more housing available to more folks who need it. The fact is, a board costs what it costs, and the costs keep going up. So at some point, we have to address that bottom line of the cost of building. And here's one way in which we can do that. So I just wanted to point out that, we don't have a lot of opportunities to affect how many projects like this can actually occur. It really falls in the laps of nonprofits to do that, churches, other organizations. But where we can, I think we're anxious to be able to help in whatever way we can, and this is one of those instances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoekstra. Any other comments from council? I just have one that mirrors both of those, and I was actually reminded of something that I said a couple of years ago about how we have limited tools in our toolbox, and we need to find new tools and new ways to be able to help with affordable housing. And one of the things that stuck out for me in staff report on this is near the bottom of the first page of the staff report. This is the first time the city has received a request for funding of this type. So we're getting creative. We're using the opportunities that are out there and available to us to try to do what we can to try to get more affordable housing in the community, so that the people that want to work here and want to live here have the opportunity to do that and to have home ownership as part of that process. So I'm in great support of this. Any other comments from council? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin? Yes. Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Peters? Yes. Trethewey?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And while we're moving on to the next item, I think we can invite Mr. Garcia back up to the dais. Next item is item 7C, establishment of a neighborhood enterprise zone for a proposed mixed-use development at 667 Hastings Avenue. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. This is the second of 3 projects that were affordable housing related that we reviewed with you at that study session in August. And this in particular deals with a development that's moving forward at 667 Hastings, better known as the former site of Googs, because everyone knows where Googs was. Little bit different here in the process that's outlined in the staff report, but also what we're recommending for you to do tonight. First is just holding a duly noticed public hearing regarding the establishment of this zone to receive comments, which is required in the state legislation. However, we're also in the midst of a 60-day notification period required for the other taxing units. So the action that you would actually possibly be able to take on this would not be able to occur until December. But for the timing and different things, we decided it was best and are proceeding with actually having this public hearing at this point, and then would assume that this will come back before you not only to create the zone that's outlined in the recommendation, but then theoretically after that to approve a particular action for the particular site at 667 Hastings. And staff is ready to expound on anything else that you might have questions on.
Great. Any questions from council for staff? I just have one, and I know that Mr. Vanderploeg is here. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Dave, sorry about that. Go right ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you.
No, please.
Just a quick question. I think I know the answer to this, but recalling from years gone by, if I am correct, when it comes to NEZs, there's a stipulation that only a certain percentage of the total parcels in a governmental unit can be designated as NEZ. I'm pretty sure we're under that threshold, but can you just shed light on that?
Yeah, I think what we expect to eventually have happen here, and this would only directly impact 7 units. So we're not anywhere near that limitation at this point, Dave.
Didn't think we were, but.
Good question.
Thank you.
And any other questions? Okay, I'm going to follow up mine, and I think you answered the first part of my question with Dave's. 7 units that are here in this development total, right? 7 residential units? Is that?
Yes, I'm going to look back at Lynn. Lynn and
Who
Mark.
may want to look at Mark Vanderploeg. Yeah.
8?
Okay, Mark, would you come up
It's
to the
always
microphone?
good to
'Cause
correct me.
I think
8.
my follow-up question is probably going to be for you. I know that Mr. Van Beek knows almost everything that happens in complete detail with what goes on. Sure. So I'm on Planning Commission, so I think I already knew the answer to this question. There's 7 or 8 units that are going in there, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it's 8.
Okay, and one of the things that the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, allowed was the opportunity for there to be more units in that particular space than there were before. Am I correct on that as well?
That is correct. So previously, pre-UDO, it was Zone C2, Highway Commercial District, which would have allowed for a mixed-use building, but the number of dwelling units would have been limited to 2. So with the advent of UDO and the changing of that zone district to our corridor mixed-use zone district, it allows for a lot more residential. It's allowing for a lot more mixed-use buildings of this variety and type.
All right, great. Thank you. I wanted to just make sure that I was clear on that. Appreciate that. Any other questions from council for staff at this point? All right, seeing none, I will open the public hearing in regard to this item. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address council in regard to this particular item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 7C?
Motion to adopt recommendation of city staff to city council to hold a duly noticed public hearing regarding the establishment of a neighborhood enterprise zone to receive comments pursuant to Public Act 147 of 1992.
Wonderful, right off the top of your head, Mr. Trethewey. Is there support for that incredibly detailed motion?
Support.
Support from Aaron's Horse. Is there any discussion? I just have one comment that's a follow-up to that. It wasn't a question prior, but one of the things that we've learned in this process of affordable housing is that we have basically 4 things we can do. And the acronym that I keep in my head to remember is PIZA, P-I-Z-A. Plan, invest, zone, and abate. And if I'm counting correctly, I believe we are doing 2 of those here. Whether you want to call this investment or abatement, it doesn't really matter to me. It covers one of them, and zoning is the other by doing the Unified Development Ordinance. So again, congratulations to staff for helping us use the tools that we have in our toolbox available creatively to be able to try to get more housing for the people of Holland. So thank you. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Corbin? Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Peters? Garcia? Yes. Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. That closes out our public hearings for the evening. Next item on the agenda, item number 9, written petitions and communications. In addition to having a in-person public comment period at every one of our meetings, we also, during the pandemic, established an email address where members of the public can send their comments directly to city council members. We gather those and accumulate them in between our regular meetings and then accept them as information at our our regular meetings. We do not read them out loud into the record, but they are accepted at this time. And so, council, what is your pleasure in regard to the public comments? Oh, and before you do that, just make sure everybody knows at home, the email address to send for comments to the city council is publiccomment@cityofholland.com. That's publiccomment@cityofholland.com. They will all come. We will all see all of them. So, what is the pleasure of council?
Motion to accept as information.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item, item 10A, Planning Commission proposed rezoning of 170 West 22nd Street from the TNR Traditional Neighborhood Residential to the PUD Planned Unit Development District. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and I'm going to ask Community and Neighborhood Services Director Mark Vanderploeg to make the long walk up to the podium once again.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council members. The Holland Area Aquatic Center is before you tonight, and they're requesting final adoption of their request to have their property at 170 West 22nd Street rezoned from the TNR Traditional Neighborhood Residential District to the PUD Planned Unit Development District. So in September, just last month, on September 14th, the Planning Commission held the required public hearing. That goes along with it with all rezoning requests. There were no comments registered from the general public. In the area there, everybody within 300 feet was notified, and nobody came out to speak. The Planning Commission noted that the Aquatic Center's request to rezone the property to the PUD district complies with kind of current development trends in the area as well as with the city master plan. So in addition to that, it was noted after, kind of almost immediately after the adoption of UDO, in a conversation with the Aquatic Center folks, that there was kind of one unintended consequence of UDO, and that was previous to the adoption of UDO, there were a number of properties in the city, and the Aquatic Center was one of them that was governed under a conditional use permit. And that happens to be a permit that was issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the first conditional use permit that the Aquatic Center got was back in the 90s for their first big addition. Then the Aquatic Center came in, actually, I believe it was maybe 2 years ago. I forget exactly, but they got kind of an amendment to that conditional use permit to do the expansion that they're still doing right now. So one of the unintended consequences is that UDO did away with conditional use permits. So we tried to catch most things, as the mayor knows, on the Planning Commission. Some things have slipped through, so that was one of them that slipped through. So, but we came up with kind of a good way to react to that, and it made perfectly good sense in this situation to request that property be rezoned to the PUD district. And actually, right across the street, the Holland Hospital, in a large kind of campus kind of environment, they have a PUD. The Aquatic Center, as we know, is it's a whole city block, kind of a campus kind of situation too, and it seemed very prudent and the right thing to do to rezone it to the PUD district. In rezoning it to PUD, it would also grant the Aquatic Center some signage rights that they sorely want, and it's a big building, so they wanted to have some additional signage rights, and they were not able to do that with the TNR district. They will be able to do that, though, with the PUD district. And there was also some height requirements in there, too. The buildings is kind of set at 55 feet, which is not allowed in the TNR district. But the Planning Commission, in approval of the site plan, approved that higher limit for the building. So some good rationale for rezoning it to PUD, along with the development plan that goes along with that. But yes, the Planning Commission is wholeheartedly recommending that City Council approve this rezoning request to the PUD district. So,
Great.
Any questions at all?
Questions from council? Yes, Mike.
Mark, what is going to preclude, I'm trying to choose my words very carefully here, the expansion of this PUD to the east, marching toward Michigan Avenue?
So,
Through you.
yeah,
didn't
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, in regards to the other big institutional use there, I mean, Holland Hospital, they have their own PUD, and it basically stops at 24th Street, okay? They do own a bunch of properties on the north side of 24th Street, but those are not zoned PUD. Those are zoned, I believe they're zoned a form-based code district that would allow for office-type use of that. So with the adoption of UDO, we were being very clear, you know, with the hospital that, hey, your PUD is to be south of 24th Street, kind of from 24th to 27th between Washington and River Avenue, and it should remain within that. And I think the Holland Hospital is very happy to have that as basically their campus area. I don't, in everything that I've talked with the Aquatic Center, they have absolutely no thoughts of going to the east of Maple in the future at all. I think they're very happy being where they are. I know that we do have a representative here tonight from the Aquatic Center that could speak to that if you wanted, Mike, but I don't want to say it would never happen, but I can't imagine that we would want to rezone to the east side of Maple to PUD.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because you've got two rather massive and very needed entities over there, and that would be the natural progression. I mean, the hospital has picked up quite a bit of property over there. The Aquatic Center, I used to run track there, so they've taken up a good portion of that. Greg, don't you know how old I am now? We've had a lot of discussion about the buffer zones going along Michigan because of the medical situations there, the commercial, and trying to preserve the residential feel. That's just, unfortunately, between, 24th and 27th there. It almost looked right. You've got the park and everything else just to the north. That's what I'm concerned about. So just a little bit of reassurance for the residents in that area that probably not going to happen, but at least it's been discussed.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to point out too, though, with UDO, we are looking to have more residential and mixed-use developments along the river or the Michigan Avenue corridor itself. But talking that very strong neighborhood area between Maple and Pine Avenue, just north of 24th Street, 23rd Street in there, that ought to be retained and preserved as the strong neighborhood of which it is, so, yeah.
Yes, Nikki.
I did go to one of the meetings that the people at Aquatic Center held for the neighbors, with the neighbors, and the neighbors really like the Aquatic Center. Their concerns were, you know, a robust buffer so that headlights don't shine in their windows, but they considered it a good neighbor. They liked the, well, previously green space, and now it'll be back, some of that, and that was not one of their concerns, but it's a quieter neighbor, except during meets, perhaps. No sirens. So I don't think they're opposed to this, and you were very good to answer their concerns. So I think they all appreciate that.
All right. And any other questions for staff in this regard?
Over here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if this would affect like conversations around traffic at all, like any street engagement, right, with rezoning. But I know that I've gotten increasing kind of messages or communications from residents around there, just anticipating what's to come. So I don't know if, again, I don't think this is related to this conversation, so I don't know, but is there a potential that this would either help or hinder kind of where those conversations could head, or what some of the resolutions could be, to address some of those concerns in the future?
All right. Any other questions, comments from council? Great. Thank you, Mark. What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 10A?
Move we approve.
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Garcia. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters, Garcia,
Yes.
Truthui,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin, Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Item 10B, City Attorney Ordinance Amendment for Downtown Development Authority. Mr. Van Beek.
I'll look across at Ron. I'll give him a chance to take care of this one for us.
All right, great, thanks.
Thank you. This is a rather simple ordinance amendment as well to take care of a unintended consequence of UDO. The Downtown Development Authority has a legal description that's in the ordinance there, and excluded PRD zone property. But when UDO was adopted, the PRD was eliminated and it became a PUD zone district. And the desire of the DDA is that be the Washington School condominiums and the Washington School site condominium property be excluded. And so that's what this ordinance amendment will do, exclude that from the downtown development district.
All right, thank you. Any questions for City Attorney? What's the pleasure of council in regard to item 10B?
Motion to adopt the recommendation from City Attorney to with the attached amendments to City Code 2-9, that they be adopted.
Moved by Truthui. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Arnshorst. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters, Garcia,
Yes.
Truthui,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin, Hoekstra,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Item 10C, Community and Neighborhood Services, update Chapter 6 to reflect changes to the FEMA flood insurance maps, adopt emergency resolution. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, Mayor and Council, periodically, this is something that's required, goes up to, from FEMA down through Eagle and other organizations, and we need to make periodic updates. And in effect, what this does is guarantee that for those residents, they can participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. You've had some changes, and I think we have quite frankly, we have a new staff member at Eagle that's kind of learning all of the collection of different requirements that seem to change and are a little confusing. So we had one change on this, and actually Ron is prepared for us, for you, that actually for timing to just avoid any problems with this. Not only are we recommending that you make this change as outlined, but that you also adopt it as an emergency ordinance, which we don't do often, but periodically you certainly have the power to put this in place. And then this would secure for those residents that take advantage of this flood insurance program, no exposure.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 10C?
This one's complicated.
Motion to support 10C.
Moved by Corbin. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Truthui. Any discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Peters, Garcia, Truthui,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin, Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 10D, Public Safety Services, amendments to Section 18-49 of Chapter 18, Parking Offenses and Fines. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, I think I'm taking this one tonight too. I can't always, it's harder to know who's sitting behind me when I'm sitting here, but this is a recommended increase. Periodically, we do take a look at various fines and the structures of those fines, which I think the report marches through. It was 2015 is the last time that some of these were updated, and there's a variety of recommendations in here to moderately increase some of those fees. Those have been checked against other communities and quite frankly against other organizations here in town that have parking fees either, because every once in a while you might have someone that chooses to park in spot A instead of spot B because the fee might be less. So this goes through all of that, cleans up some of those processes, and makes recommendations to you to make a periodic increase on some of those fees.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Peters.
Keith, when you say other organizations in town that also give tickets, who are you referring to?
Yep, so I know Hope College had a situation, or has a situation, the way that I understand it, where they certainly write tickets also. And we've heard from other sources, quite frankly, some friends and family there, that it's cheaper right now to park on city streets and violate those ordinances in case you get a ticket than it is to park illegally in some of the in some of the college lots. And so we've just, with this periodic increase, we think we're potentially going to encourage following of the rules.
I get Hope College's issue for sure. I mean, I'm still amazed that they allow all their students to have a car. This is the day they get there. That's a subject for another time. But if I read this correctly, if someone like Jay's friends park on a street overnight on 11th Street, on a dead-end street, or not Jay because I know better, of course, but others that do, people who don't know the rules, people who are visiting Holland in the middle of the summer, or excuse me, outside summer, winter, fall, this time of year, who are visiting, accidentally leave their car overnight through, maybe see the little sign come into town, that fine is now $25. You know, when that was 10, it's a nuisance, but I think with some of the people that live downtown in the neighborhoods that this is impacting more than most, that just seems excessive to me. And I don't want to change this whole document, but I would be inclined to leave that. 15 I thought was a lot of money for visitors who don't know any different. Welcome to Holland. Here's a $25 ticket for parking on the street between 2 and 5 o'clock in the morning, when the weather's, and other than the middle of winter, it doesn't make any sense. Probably not a surprise to hear that from me, but. So, the other for $35 if they don't pay it in 8 days, $50 if they don't pay it in 30 days, $75 after 30 days in a civil infraction. It just seems pretty severe to me for parking your car in a street where we have visitors and we're a destination, and that could happen. The other ones that are listed here are like parking in handicap places and other things that I think deserve the numbers that I'm seeing here. And I just, for what it's worth, I just think it's excessive. If I'm the only one, I'll just vote no and it'll pass. It'll be okay.
Any other questions? What's the pleasure of council in regard to item 10D?
Motion to support item 10D as presented.
Moved by Corbin. Is there support? Support by Trethewey. Any discussion?
Just quick, maybe a question. I mean, I see where Jay's kind of, well, he's coming from. I'm inclined to support this anyways, but is there any way, like in that kind of scenario, right, where we have a visitor and there is no parking, any way that we can request some sort of, variance or permission overnight for a special, like under special circumstances?
We do have that system in place somewhat regularly. People contact either directly, and we encourage them to contact the police department directly or through the city manager's office. So I'm going to miss some of those examples. But for example, someone's moving and they have a moving truck and those types of things. We allow people to, with notice, park overnight. So there definitely is, I think, a good degree of latitude that we work with neighbors and neighborhoods. Now everyone understands, not everyone, reads the signs that come into the city, even though there's a lot of cities that have programs like this in place. So we also get calls of people that are irritated that they got a ticket in those instances. But yes, we do work with property owners in those types of situations.
Okay, good. which it is in effect as of this last weekend, Monday morning, or Monday, right?
It's that time
I
of
got a
year.
warning, I know.
It's that time of year.
I got a warning, though, so thank you.
Yep. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin. Yes. Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Peters,
No.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Item 10E, Planning Commission, text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you. And I didn't see Tricia behind me earlier. She probably was going to take one of the other items earlier, but I'm going to ask her to just come up here, answer any questions, probably the 30-second executive version here, Tricia, as to these collection of administrative cleanup items with the UDO. Or more than 30 seconds.
Hi, Mayor and City Council. This is the first of probably a couple of rounds that will be before you. We've noticed some typos, errors, and omissions after we, yes. But this is the official public hearing. So it's the first.
It's the second time or the first time.
Right. So most of these changes are really minor, literally typos, wrong sections that inadvertently got referenced, some language that we'd like to add for clarification purposes to make sure everybody understands the new regulations, some maps that were inadvertently drawn incorrectly that we would like to correct, adding back in some language that was accidentally omitted, really all very minor. The only real change that I think folks might be interested in, this is a name change to a header in a section just to provide clarification on when permits are required for signs and when they're not required. Some additional clarifying language in this section as well for signs to state that the Downtown Development Authority can approve some larger signs if it's appropriate and architecturally compatible with buildings downtown. Parking spaces, just to clarify that they shall be independently accessible when we're doing our parking counts. Some days got mixed up with public hearings and notifications for both Planning Commission meetings and Board of Appeals meetings. We need to amend the definition of a flag lot to be a little bit more clear, and so folks understand that a flag lot is traditionally when you place one house behind another house on a street, and it may not have all of the required frontage that a typical lot would have. So here are the two changes I want to highlight real quick that we did talk about at the last public meeting. This first one is we would like to be more uniform with all detached accessory buildings. So no matter if you're building a detached garage or a detached accessory dwelling unit, we would like the heights of all detached buildings to be uniform and the same. We feel that provides consistency throughout the neighborhoods and is easier for staff to review as well. And then the only other change is we'd like to add another definition. Throughout UDO, we refer now to parcels that contain dwellings with 1 to 4 units. So we'd like to add a definition just to say that that 1 to 4 is per parcel and not necessarily per building. So if you happen to have 3 duplexes on a property, it has to fall under the commercial regulations and not the residential 1 to 4 regulations.
Any questions for Tricia?
I'm just curious. So all this is done up, we pass it. Who went through and was looking for typos? I mean, I understand when you have something like the aquatic center and that's a practical situation that came up, but
Great question. So what's been happening is we have residents calling saying, can I do this? And we say, new ordinance, I don't know, so let me look it up. And then as we're flipping back between the regulations and the zone districts and the additional sections that list additional criteria, we're finding inconsistencies. So it's just through the natural course of business. If you read the document in its entirety right now, it looks great. It's not until we go to apply the regulations to real-time situations that we're seeing inconsistencies.
Tricia, if I could add to that, I think what is the saying? You learn something the best when you teach it. Probably the analogy here is you learn something the best when you start using it, and I think that's what we're finding.
So this could be an ongoing kind of thing.
Will be an ongoing thing.
Yes, Lynn?
Well, and also, you are going through it. You and Mallory are going through it page by page, and would thank you so much for taking the time to do that and finding some of these typos, and it's obviously very labor intensive, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll be back at the Planning Commission the second Tuesday of November with another package of changes that council will then see in November.
Other questions from council? I'm going to ask you the same one I ask every time with this. None of these are substantive changes. I mean, the only one that I think that might maybe qualify for that is the maximum height of a detached accessory dwelling unit versus the maximum height of a detached garage. But what we're doing is we're saying that accessory dwelling unit can be the same height that a garage has always been allowed to be, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're not allowing, because there was controversy surrounding Udo about a number of things. We're not touching any of those things that had been controversial at all.
That's correct.
All right, great, thank you. What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 10E?
Will we approve?
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Raymond. Any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin? Yes. Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Now on to 11, reports from special committees. 11A, presentation from the Community Energy Plan Steering Committee on progress from the council-approved 2018 Strategic Development Team recommendations. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I will get out of the way quickly on this one also, because we have 3 guests with us. You, I think, know them all, and maybe getting more used to one. Dave Koster is here from the Board of Public Works. I don't think I said that exactly, Dave. And Salyers is here, and of course, we're just celebrating Ann for fantastic service as she is going on to better things, at least she thinks so. And Andrew Reynolds is here also, and I think, is Andrew making the presentation? Are you making the presentation? You're making, oh, well, fantastic.
Help them get a little more used to me.
Okay,
hopefully.
but fantastic news tonight, and I think you're going to sense quickly that you kind of have a 2-step process here. You're hearing on something going back for the most recent update on this SDT that you're going to hear more about. And then you're about to get a recommendation from the current SDT, which takes us from this point moving forward. So, Dave, welcome, and I'm used to you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. It's great to be with you. I want to celebrate the entire team here that's been working on this. And as Keith said, you're going to be hearing about the next SDT, but it's important to review what the last SDT said and now, you know, what the progress has been since that strategic development team put their recommendations in front of you in 2018. And so we're glad to be able to share a little bit of that news for you and for the public tonight. Just a reminder here, again, we show this graphic a lot, but in talking about the community plan, it's important to recognize that this is a 40-year plan. It's a strategy document really to help us move forward as a community, focusing on not just how energy is being produced, but how it's being used in here, keeping in alignment with our community values and making sure that we're measuring along the way to ensure that progress is there and that accountability is there on that plan. There we go. When the plan was first put in place, the only real key metric that was there was the goal of this 10 metric tons per capita by 2050. There were other overarching goals, but without the actual metric behind them. Those goals were the ensuring economic competitiveness, providing reliable and affordable energy, and protecting the environment are the overarching goals. The strategic development team in 2018 recommended metrics for the other two goals, and those were to make sure that our rates on electric were competitive with the neighboring investor-owned utilities, and that's in every customer class. And then in terms of the reliability of our energy supply, there are a couple measures out there regarding the duration and frequency of electric outages, and we wanted to make sure that we were at the median of other municipalities, not just other utilities in general, because municipalities generally perform better than the investor-owned utilities because of our dense footprints and our what we like to think are good practices in our design and operation of those systems as well. But we want to be at the median or better as it relates to that. And when the plan was first put in place, the goal of this plan was to be able to absorb really what we expected to see in terms of increased economic activity in our community. We have a very vibrant, robust, large industrial base in our community that was expected to grow and is still expected to grow. And in order to do that in a way that would maintain this and improve our environmental performance, a plan would be needed to help absorb that growth and still have improved environmental performance. And we could do that by focusing on these strategies associated with the use of energy and producing energy. And a lot of that also would result in investments that could be maintained here locally instead of sending our money away to far distant places for, at the time, was fuel supply for a lot of our electric generation. Now can be put into things that are happening here locally, and we have seen that. We've seen over $4 million invested in our housing stock over the last 10 years under the Home Energy Retrofit Program. So again, these investments being made locally, other contractors that work with us on our energy waste reduction programs too. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is move from where we were at 24 metric tons per capita down to 10 was the original goal, and the target really was a stretch goal over the modeling result of 13.4 metric tons per capita. If we didn't do nothing, that was expected to grow to 37 metric tons per capita by 2050 under the modeling that the consultant had done. So this is really taking something that was heading north and bringing it and moving it in the other direction. So at the time in 2017 and 2018, a strategic development team was convened to relook at the goals at that time. A couple of members of that team here tonight, Jay and Dave, but also our board chair, Tim Hemingway, and then some community representatives, including Hope College. Dave Van Weilen from Hope College was there. Don Triesenberg and Phil Meyer helped contribute to the discussion around strategies at that time. Once that was presented to council in 2018, in February 2018, then we got going as a steering committee to actually work on the making it happen. As if you look at the graphic on the right-hand side of this page here, you can see that the council ultimately is responsible for setting the direction, determining what the metrics need to be and the targets, and they are advised by the strategic development team. That's the direction setting. The implementation of that happens really with the steering committee and tactical action teams that are out there looking at studying the issues, planning, piloting potentially programs, and then hopefully institutionalizing these solutions that ultimately bring the improvements to our performance. And you could see here the representatives of that steering committee are made up by a resolution that was adopted by the city council when the original plan was adopted back in 2012. And Keith and I are on that, and also representatives from our respective staffs. Lynn holds that spot. Tim Vogley did in the past. John Van Uffelen did in the past for me, and there's been a transition here over the last couple of years with his retirement as well, where now Ted Seiler fills that role. And a community representative, and Jim Stelter is that person who's been helping us. Jim's been great at being able to make some contacts in the industry as well. And the SDT heard from Jim this time around as he made some contacts with Steelcase, for example, to bring in some case studies of things that they're doing as an industry. So we continue to be benefited from Jim's work. And then, of course, we cannot forget or give enough credit. Frankly, we need to give more credit to Ann. As we'll see later in this presentation, a number of the different accomplishments over the last 10 years. Ann has been instrumental and frankly leading the charge as it relates to all those things. She helps pull together the steering committee to make sure that work is being done, tasks are assigned, deadlines are being met, feedback is coming in, and then ultimately we get this message back to you how we're doing. So, how are we doing? I want to get to the end here real quick. Overall, what we have is a big green dot on here. I think last time you heard from the strategic development team and the leadership there. From this time around, they recommended maybe going to a green, yellow, red dot sort of approach. So we took a little bit of a shot at this and wanted to just kind of take this high-level view that really the strategies at that time were grouped into 3 areas, addressing buildings, transportation, and education. And what was forecasted based upon the work and the outcomes there is that between the 2018 and 2021 timeframe, we would actually achieve 1.21 metric tons per capita if we achieve those objectives during that period of time. The good news is we actually achieved 2.1 metric tons per capita overall, so we exceeded our goal in that interim period of time by nearly 70%. So great news on that. Now I'll dive into the specific areas and talk more about each of those. In the area of buildings, again, you see the metric ton per capita reduction here. 4 strategies in that area. Promoting the home energy retrofit program. We tried to get to a level of 250 homes per year. We are still far short of that. Now, we have tried very hard. We actually increased the rebate percentage to 20% and kept that there for a period of time. We've had extensive marketing being done by our major contractor, that one that's done most of the work, and that's West Michigan Glass Block in the area. And we've had great feedback from those that have participated in the program in terms of their overall level of satisfaction with not just the energy savings, but the comfort in the home and the improvement in some cases to some aesthetic elements as well. But there's more work to do here. I do want to say that our Holland Energy Fund board has spent a lot of time with this particular project, and also Dan Broersma recently for that meeting came in, and there are new ideas coming forward to move that needle further in terms of sealing homes and doing some things as a pilot program in that regard. We implemented a residential and commercial, the 2 items, numbers 2 and 3, energy waste reduction program. We've had one since 2008 with the BPW. The law was sunsetting for us, so we had an option of what we could do, give us more flexibility. We've created a program that will actually move us more aggressively into that area. Instead of a 1% per year savings, we'll be building over the next few years to a 2% per year savings and investing a lot more funds into that program as a utility. And our consultant has shown that that is still cost effective compared to other ways of serving those customers' needs with electricity. The 4th item here was to take a good look at the results of using the snowmelt system for the source water for the heat pump at the Civic Center in order to maybe create some materials that could be marketed to buildings of that kind of scale and size. Well, COVID happened, and unfortunately the programming at the Civic Center has changed dramatically as a result of that, so it's hard to have an apples to apples sort of look and really kind of a realistic look at what the energy use is going to be under more of a full programming schedule. So there's more work to be done there, but it will continue to be monitored, and we'll continue to look at that as an option going forward. In the transportation sector here, one of the things that we wanted to do was to incentivize and promote EV adoption, and we've done that this last few years with the creation of residential and commercial electric vehicle charging station incentives, $300 for a homeowner, $1,500 for a commercial, and we are working on a larger incentive for a direct current fast charger. We've got 3 areas in town that are interested in these quick charging stations, which demand quite a bit of electric use. So we're excited about that as well. We wanted to be 5 times the state average per capita. Our records show, based upon what the Department of Transportation of the state has given us, is that we are there, based upon those numbers of what is here locally versus that state average. We're doing well. We don't want to rest on that. We want to continue to move that forward. And so, but we're excited about having implemented those things. Item 2 on this page is developing the alternative vehicle, or the electric vehicle and alternative fuel policy for our vehicles and for our maintenance equipment. It was originally vehicles. We expanded it into maintenance equipment as well. And you've seen the results of that now. Tonight, matter of fact, you just approved 2 additional full-size electric or hybrid vehicles for our electric fleet. We had a service truck last year that was just brought on board. The crews like it. It essentially eliminates idle time, which eliminates a lot of that inefficient fuel usage and cuts down on the carbon emissions there. And so we have these full-size trucks as well. The city continues to look at additional vehicles with the police department and other things that are coming forward. We have other plans in our 5-year budget to continue to move that fleet. And so that policy is in place, and you've adopted that. And then the third item here is to continue to look at situations that we could be doing to encourage both electric and eventually autonomous vehicles in our community as that technology continues to emerge and evolve. And so task force was out there looking at infrastructure. It was really a team made up of a number of different area participants, including the MACs, but also some of our engineering, manufacturing firms that have engineering talent that work in this space were part of that action team as well. Where it led us was towards this concept of really needing to look at this as a broader mobility strategic plan. And that we have a proposal for that was actually shared with the strategic development team. And as you'll hear coming up, that is actually a recommendation to encourage that partnership among a number of different entities here in town to make that mobility strategic plan a reality. So that will have its own set of initiatives that comes out of that. So because it wasn't totally complete there on that and we didn't move forward on it, it gets a yellow, but a lot of good work was done there, and I think we have the launching pad to that mobility study. And as it relates to education, a couple of things here. One was to continue our community education processes that we have in place, including the Living Sustainably Along the Lakeshore series and our articles in the Holland Sentinel, and also to develop a broader multi-year education plan. And so the Living Sustainably series has been continuing, and thanks to Mark Vanderploeg, again, all of our staff around here has had a role in the tactical action teams and leading them, or making sure that they're contributing to that as well. Mark led the team associated with the education plan that was presented as a resource document to you, and it's also on the web page associated with the current strategic development team's recommendations. We want to implement that plan now. There's budget dollars that are identified there. There's different actions that are prioritized within there. So the plan is developed. It was just finished over the last few months, and so we're ready to move forward on that implementation. And then calculating the carbon footprint, publishing CEP metrics annually. You can see there that what was put in place under the originally the Holland Hope College Sustainability Institute, and later with Michelle Gibbs on board at the city, was the creation of the dashboard. It is in place, but it really hadn't been publicized very extensively at this point, so we kind of gave ourselves a little bit of a yellow there. There's more, maybe some work we can do and figure out what our dashboard is going to look like going forward based upon our reporting that's associated with the recommendations coming out of the SDT this time around. And then finally, item 2 there, calculating the carbon footprint, and doing that, something that we would do every other year, and investigate strategies for benchmarking other cities. And again, there we are doing that every other year, and of course we participate in ICLEI and the Carbon Disclosure Project, which benchmarks us against other cities and is a regular reference for us to understand what those communities are doing. It's important really to help the community understand, and I know this is really going to be tough for you to see. We had an open house during the strategic development team process where this was up on a bulletin board, but it just expresses that from really the early parts of our process, even back before the energy plan was created, there were efforts going on in our community. And there aren't enough rows on here to really do it all in one slide, so Andrew did this really cool thing where if I click that, actually it scrolled slower before, so it was actually pretty cool. But it would actually scroll up and show you that all these other things are going on. Just a tremendous amount of initiatives that have come to fruition that have moved us forward, and not a lot of people maybe have seen it. It's our job to make sure they're aware of it, and I know that that's more effort that we need to do in terms of kind of letting people know about those things. But what it boils down to in terms of the actual progress then, again, remembering that we started off at 24 metric tons per capita. Our first measurement really occurred around the 2015 timeframe. And if you look at where we were projecting to go based upon the do-nothing scenario, we'd be at 25. We had actually already started moving that down to 22. And by 2018, we were expected to be up to 26 if we did nothing. We'd move that down to 19 at that point. And now in 2020, we do have our latest measurement on that. And we were supposed to be at 27, now we're down to 17. So this regular progress has been made, and again, 2 metric tons per capita between that 2018 and 2020 timeframe. And so that's our report on all of the efforts, and just appreciate everybody that was involved in that, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah. Questions from council members? Great. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
And my understanding is we're not looking for any action on that at all. That's just
just for report information, and it leads us into this.
All right. So the next item is item 11B, Community Energy Plan Strategic Development Team Recommendation. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. We had the chair and vice chair spend, I think it was 2 hours presenting and discussing and answering questions.
I think they said
Wednesday.
it was 15 minutes, wasn't it?
There was a joke in there somewhere. I think there was also a joke about 364 days versus 4 to 5 months or something like that. So certainly I think you had that information. That presentation that was made last week was made available. There's no shortage of links to documents that we've had out there now for quite some time. I think the way that I've described it is we've tried to do that in such a way where you can do kind of the 5-minute version, you can do the 5-hour version, and quite frankly, you probably could do the 5-day version if you went through all of the resources and documents that the SDT went through. I think our intent tonight is not to go through all of those things again. Certainly Dave and I don't know if Dave, if there's any particular highlight that you want to make. I think we really highlighted it last time. The one that I think is worthwhile, and these are really Brian Peugeot. He kind of said you really need to do it this way. And I think he just talked about that basically, if you would adopt the recommendations made by the SDT, picking up on the report that you just received, that then moving forward, you'd basically get to a goal that I think all staff would and the SDT team would say it's not an easy to reach goal, it's kind of built-in stretch goal of 12. But that basically moves forward the original goal of the CEP of reaching 13 by 2050, and it basically achieves it by 2030 should we continue to be successful in meeting those interim strategies and delivering on that with this steering committee and the tactic team. So Dave, Ann, Andrew, myself, and a bunch of members of our respective teams that are working on this are available for questions. Dave, anything else that you'd like to just
for the public's benefit,
for?
because that wasn't televised last time, is that the deliverables from the strategic development team take the form of the strategic development team webpage on the City of Holland's website. So cityofholland.com, and then you can do a little quick search under strategic development team, and it will take you to a link to their page. On there, there's some background and history, and then you get into a community comparison that we had performed, or the strategic development team had performed, looking at 4 benchmark communities around North America to Holland to look at what they're doing versus us and their approach in terms of management of their plans as well. That's really good information in there. And then the last piece of that are these recommendations, which take the form of 5 levers. Our electric portfolio, building energy consumption, transportation, education, and then this concept of offsets, where you're investing in reductions elsewhere in order to offset your impact. And so, you know, opening up opportunities for people to participate in those kind of programs. There are also some governance recommendations, 5 governance recommendations that were made as part of that to the city council as well, which, if adopted, will set the stage for review in 3 years, as well as an annual reporting mechanism, as I mentioned, based upon that red, yellow, green sort of progress by lever.
All right. Thank you. Thank you both. Questions for staff from council? Yes, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you for the review. That was really, really helpful to kind of set the stage, and appreciated all the information that Brian gave us at the last meeting. You mentioned the 5 levers, and so I'm wondering if you could just, I know that this is like the next step, but I wonder if you could talk about how you'll determine which levers to focus on. Clearly, some levers will have a greater impact on that bottom line, so I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think they all have importance. As a staff, you could see we were dealing with 7 strategies over the last 3-year period of time, and if you look at the number of strategies that are being recommended this time around, it far exceeds 7. So, you know, I think the strategic development team recommendations, you know, all had targets that were, some of them a little bit earlier, some of them were later, like 2030 targets. So, as a steering committee, you know, we'll have to spend some time, you know, around prioritization around that. I don't know that I have an exact expectation as it relates to that today, but I do know that one of the things that was very urgent was looking at our industries, for example, and businesses. They are the largest piece of the usage in our community, and there are also a number of areas within those that segment where there are companies that are themselves trying to figure out a plan to decarbonize and to improve. So we think that there's a good synergy there. Electric portfolio is another area where we have some opportunities probably over the next few years. We have heard that one of the assets that's in our portfolio is a coal plant that we received through Michigan Public Power Agency's ownership in the J.H. Campbell facility. They have announced that they plan to retire that plant in 2025. That was about 15 years ahead of what our original plans were in the latest integrated resource plan that we had done in the Holland BPW. So that'll provide some opportunity for filling in, and we already will be working on some options there. We just recently added additional solar to our portfolio, so now we have 30 megawatts of solar either in operation or under contract and being constructed, and 32 megawatts of wind in our portfolio. So with this additional solar that we're getting in, and if we renew our wind contract, which is expiring here next year, and we may well propose to do that and recommend doing that, that would put our renewables up to 20%, you know, a pretty sizable jump in that from the 15% level that we're at right now. And we expect that there'll be other opportunities as that coal expires. We also heard last week that Bell River, which is the other coal asset in our portfolio, made an announcement they will cease coal operation by 2028, and that's 2 years earlier than what they had projected. So we will, on the electric portfolio side, I think we'll have some opportunities to make some plans to put some resources in place there. And then I think the last piece is really this mobility plan. We don't control that as much. Again, we mentioned that that's a partnership with another number of other entities, but it would be a good thing, I think, to at least get going on having that mobility plan put together, so we can understand what priorities might emerge out of that as well. So those are some things that I can think of. A lot of other stuff is really execution. The education plan, we have a plan, so it's a matter of executing it. The energy waste reduction program, we have that in place, so it's a matter of executing it. And so, those are some of the things, Lynn, that I think maybe might, emerge maybe faster than others. But I don't know, Keith, if you have other thoughts on that.
No, I think that's well said. I think I'll reiterate that in the recommendations, the strategic development team has some kind of years that are, some are sooner than others. So I think we're going to have to organize around that, put our heads together, put the tactic teams together. But in that also is we're going to work more on some than in the beginning than we are in others.
All right. Any other questions from council members?
Had a very insightful comment last week on a lot of this is top down, and BPW has done a lot of the heavy lifting to this point, and the rest of it will depend upon getting the word out, and in that way the education lever will be very important. Everyone needs to know about this, and I think that's part of the difficulty with Holland. The retrofit program is, we need to get the word out. It's out, we know it's there, but somehow people miss it. And so I'm very excited about the education component as well as all the others, because it all depends. I mean, that's one of the remarks at the very end. Yeah. This will only work if you do your part, we do our part, and in industrial and commercial, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Corbin.
I'm kind of excited by the retrofit program because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know where the commercial industry is on this. There may be some out there already doing retrofit to say, find some cost savings and offset our carbon, but we also don't know who's purchasing carbon recs. So that's another one. That's a big part or piece of this. 2/3 of our energy consumption comes from the commercial industry. So if we can wrap our hands around it, survey, understand that, we may be making a bigger impact than we know at this point. So retrofitting the carbon recs to offset the carbon use that we have, I think are responsible levers that we have within our portfolio here. So I'm very confident we can get there.
Thanks, and that is one of the earlier expectations and targets within that segment, is to make sure that we can create that inventory, do that due diligence of reaching out to those businesses to understand who's participating right now so that we can get a better accounting of that.
I think last is what I asked and early on in our being members of this is that we need to put a value to everything we're doing, right? A carbon value. And you did that. You guys successfully were able to look at each and every item and put a carbon number to a value. And that helped us score this, to get this to a number where we understood it. So I appreciate you and your staff making sure that worked out.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Trethewey.
I've heard that statement twice, and I'm a little bothered by it, that from what I'm hearing, and I know better, but from what I'm hearing is that business hasn't done anything to this point. That cannot be any further from the truth. And I'm just trying to clarify, because if I heard it wrong, there may be some other people out there. Having been personally involved with it for the company that I work for the last 10 years with all the incentives and things out there, the BPW and some of the other competitors out there, which we won't mention, but they have been very generous with the incentives for relamping 2 or 3 times. What was it, Dave? Predictive, constructive, and the low-hanging fruit, which was the
lighting. Yeah, lighting.
Basically, we went from the regular fluorescents and the high bays to the T8s, and from the T8s to the LEDs. So that's gone through a couple of generations, and being part of the, we were one of the bigger users at one time, and there's a users group basically that gets together once a year and goes over some of these things. Some of the ingenuity that comes out of these with frequency drives and the LEDs and things like that is just phenomenal. So there's a lot of things that have been going on behind the scenes over the years that, and back from the Garforth, right from the get-go, they said residential is very important, but it's not gonna move the needle like your commercial industrial. And there's a lot of commercial industrial that have embraced that wholeheartedly and have been looking at programs such as air leaks. We just had ours done again. The energy usage for the lamps, the frequency drives that I said before to control motors, motor starters, soft motor starters, a number of things, and technology is changing constantly and trying to keep up with that. So industry, commercial and industry has been very much behind this for a very long time. I heard it a couple of times and I know better than this. I'm not hearing it right, but if I'm hearing it wrong, there may be other people, so I just wanted to offer that explanation.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and what I was trying to clarify was, if there's a company out there purchasing carbon recs, we don't know it. We can see it in their energy consumption, we can measure that, right? But if they're purchasing carbon recs to offset their carbon footprint, we don't know that. We don't survey that information. But if we can capture that information, we can understand better where that carbon offset is. So those are kind of things. The retrofit program, it's ongoing, but there could be a company that did some retrofitting but also increased their production. And so we don't see it. You know, we see them still using the same level of consumption of energy, but they've done some things, but they've also increased production somewhere in their company. So we just got to look at surveying those industries to find out what they've done. And hopefully that can go into that calculation in the future. And hopefully I clarified that correctly. If I'm wrong, you know, please let me know.
I think, you know, my comment too, Mike, was that, you know, and we did some sit downs with various businesses in the community. And I think we just find that there's a spectrum of where people are at on their journey. But all of them that we talked to had an interest and wanted to know what they could do. Sometimes this part of that education piece as well, helping them understand how to get started with that. So that's just a feedback that some are further along in that journey than others at this point. But
all right. Any other questions for staff? All right, what is the pleasure of council in regard to the Community Energy Plan Strategic Development Team's recommendations?
Motion to adopt the recommendations.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Hoekstra. Any discussion? And I do believe, Mike, go ahead. And I was going to say, otherwise we do have something from Mr. Byrd that the city clerk's going to read for us.
Go ahead.
Okay. Kathy, would you, I know that Mr. Byrd was not able to be here tonight, but wanted a statement read in regard to this item, and would you please read that for us?
First of all, I would like to extend an apology for not being here tonight. My son plays football on Wednesdays, and I have not been able to make any away games and only some of his home games due to my commitment on council. I promised him that I will be there for his last game to watch it all, and this is his last game of the year. Thank you for understanding. This is an exciting moment in our community. There has been a lot of anticipation of this plan by so many in our community. We, council, have had a lot of passionate conversation around this subject matter. So it goes without saying, council is very happy to be at this point as well. As the presentation shows, Holland is still the leader of communities, its size and even larger ones. The work has been put in and it has shown that we are leading the way. This is not to say we can do better, and that is what this plan is proposing. But we have a track record that shows we can do that. There are communities who dreamed of doing what we have accomplished and have no results to show for their dreams and desires. We don't have that. We have results. Because of those results, I dare to say we will continue to achieve above the bar and continue to be an example to other communities. As the quote states, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Our systems are very capable of sending us to the next level. Strategic Development Team, thank you. Your work is well documented and has given us a path to follow. All of the meetings and time for the 3 to 4 months working on this is greatly appreciated and should be applauded. I'm in full support of this proposed community energy plan. Quincy Byrd, Council Member at Large.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Other discussion from council members? Mr. Trethewey, did you have something?
Yes. In full disclosure, full transparency, I went kicking and screaming into this whole thing. The biggest reason is the catchwords that are out there that I'm thinking should be banned from the English language. I must say that I was pleasantly surprised when the report came out that those words were not included, and I will be gratefully appreciative of that. And that's probably one of the reasons why I will support this at this point. But this community also has to understand, and I don't want to diminish, before I go any further, I do not want to diminish the work that the SDT did. There was a lot of hours put in this, there was a lot of study, a lot of thought, a lot of intelligent people. My angst came from the conflicting sciences. There's conflicting science on a number of different areas. We're running 2 of them right now. One's called COVID and one's called energy crisis. There, I use the word. It's the conflicting sciences that people need to take a step back and do their homework, do their studying, and doing their investigations, not only from one source. We are never, unfortunately, never going to all agree, all 30,000 of us. So there has to be a voice for those that may not totally agree with this group. There's going to be a group that says, you're not moving fast enough and strong enough. There's going to be a group that says, you did just right. And there's going to be a group out there that says you went too far. My appreciation for this report, and again, reading through it, is that, again, it was done very thoughtfully, and probably the most, searching for the right word, the most rounded, best rounded way that this could have come out. Not everybody's going to agree with what I say. Well, that's, you know, we are a people of opinions. This is my opinion, and I don't think I'm speaking alone for some of the citizens of the city of Holland. So congratulations to the SDT. There is a lot of work that has to be done because this isn't done. Being part of the report 11 years ago, very excited about it, and as you well know, I don't come into this ignorant. I have been working in the recycling energy conservation arena for the past 30 years. So it's not that I just have an opinion. I have some substantial background information in it. Agree with me or don't agree with me. I appreciate, again, the middle of the road approach with some attainable goals that are out there. I think they're attainable. But I think there's also some things that and looking at the economic impact was another of my biggest fears. I think that these potentially can do both. And I'm hoping that the groups that come out with the specific charges that come out, that's a bad choice of words, the specific recommendations to these levers are looking at that, because we can save all the energy in the world, but if we don't have any jobs, we don't have any future. I hope that never happens. I really do. It's unlike me to come out of the box the first, but I had to get that out there.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments from council members? Mr. Corbett?
Well, I will say this. I share some of your sentiment, Mike, and that would probably be hard for people to hear, but I work in an area of all hazards, especially environmental and natural disasters. And what really, to understand the world that we live in, science can help us predict modeling and help us predict where we're going with the globe and the world warming, right? And that's great. But where I have a real conflict in the world I live in and the world I work in is every time there's a flood, every time there's a hurricane, every time there's a tornado, every time there's some type of weather event, it's related to climate change. And I can tell you in my world, it's because people are building in flood-prone hazard areas. They're building in fire zones. They're not taking care of things around them that causes these hazards to occur. And it's reoccurring multiple times, and it's costing us millions and millions of dollars. We just approved the National Flood Insurance Program, but people still build in flood-prone areas. And they build in these areas that are reoccurring constantly. We see the shoreline in Allegan County. We see people where we used to have cottages on the shoreline building multi-million-dollar homes on the bluffs that aren't able to sustain these type of large structures. And I think we need to come together and understand that we contribute to it. We do. But we're not really, we contribute to it, but we're not the only source of this. The natural world does tend to rise in climate or warm in its state and cause disruption in our lives. We've seen it over centuries, over thousands of years. So I think we need to be careful when we argue this, that we come from a balanced approach and saying, look, climate science is real, it's out there, but what can we do to change it? And this is what we can do to change it. We can make some changes here that are responsible to our environment, and to our neighbors, and to our friends and our families. So I'm very supportive of what we're doing here. I think we can make a difference in this with using this plan and making our world a better place to live for everyone. But I just hope and wish we all come to some sense that we are doing some of these things to ourselves. It's not just, we're contributing to that, including my members on council here and other councils, other townships, other counties. They're not passing the proper zoning and rules to prevent people from building these hazards under these hazardous conditions. So I just hope we look at this from a balanced approach as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Yes,
I will
Ms.
have to
Amshorst,
talk.
yes.
And so I think that's why these kind of teams have many members, because there is a balance. And Mike, or Councilman Trethewey, I appreciate your point of view, but I would be one of the ones who would say climate change. And if we don't do something, we won't have, the economics will be kind of a moot point, would you say? But climate science was the terminology used, and eventually, with everybody coming together, we came up with this document, and it works. And we'll see what happens in 3 years.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
Well, Brother Mike, I think this is one of those occasions where you and I are going to be in complete agreement on the fact that not everyone is going to agree on everything. First of all, I appreciate, we've said this a lot, but truly the work that's gone into this by the various groups and number of people working on this is greatly appreciated. I don't have to wrap my lips around an exhaust pipe to know that what comes out of there is not good. And probably the less that I do that, the better it is for me. And I don't want to get into a debate about the severity of the changing climate. If it's changing, I think we can all understand, to Scott's point, that things are changing, and there are things that we can do to minimize the impact that we have on our environment. And the more that we do that, the better it is for us. I think the less that we do that, probably is to our detriment, to our children's detriment. I'm frankly happy to leave it to scientists to, debate the degrees to which this is happening. But I appreciate that we in this community have an awareness and a sensitivity to the fact that there is cause and effect here, and a desire to change what we can change and to affect what we can affect. This is a hugely faith-based community, and with all due respect to Mr. Ashby's previous comments, I believe we do, as faith-oriented folks, have an obligation to look after our creation, the creation that we've been given, and help it prosper. It's good for, I think it makes God happy. It's good for us. It's good for the economy. It's good all around. So I'm happy. It would have been cool, I guess, at least to think about having a incredibly big goal to go after, like we're going to have a negative impact in 3 years, but we can't do that. I am happy with incremental steps to help us get to the goal that we've set, and sometimes in the larger scheme of things, that's the most practical and prudent approach to do these things. So thanks to everybody who's made this possible, and as we go forward, we'll probably discover other things that maybe we could change. Who knows, right? So that's it.
Thanks, Dave. Mr. Garcia.
The presentation last week, I think for me gave me a lot of confidence. Certainly a lot of comfort. I mean, there were concerns and things that were raised about the specificity of certain levers and how vague maybe they were, and how however, I think the way that the presentation opened up, and so Brian did a great job, and Quincy as well requoted this, but you do not rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your systems. And I think the report preceding this discussion that we received from Mr. Koster, I think paints that same picture, right? We set some goals and we exceeded that, and our systems in place, the things that we have been working on as a city prior to these conversations over the last year, continue to point us in a trajectory where we're way better, right, than many other communities, but certainly than if we had just continued on our path. And so this is only causing us to be more aggressive, and I think that's exciting work, not simply because we've set a goal out there, but that we have some goals that are attainable and some things that we're sure to meet with the kind of community that we are. And so, I'm super excited about what we have before us.
Lynn.
Yeah, and I guess I'd just like to say that I'm excited about the level of accountability that's kind of layered into this plan. I mean, besides all of it, I've learned so much over the course of the last year, and it's just been enormously helpful. And I know that when you're doing something really good, you want to share it, and I can tell the excitement that the BPW staff and the city staff have in wanting to share that and establishing some benchmarking goals and reporting targets and things like that. And I think that you do that because the community wants to know. They're excited to know about what's happening, and so I just really appreciate the interest that's been shown in this particular process and the enormous work that the SDT team did. I'm very supportive of the plan and looking forward to seeing how we move forward.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? I too want to thank the strategic development team. I also want to thank staff. This was a big lift, a lot of work. When I appointed the strategic development team a year ago, I was looking for 8 people with a variety of viewpoints, a variety of opinions, and a variety of skill sets. Because I was hoping, as Mike, I think you were trying to say, looking for a well-rounded report. I wanted that input from all sides because part of my hope was that this discussion by council at this point would be exactly what it is, that all of us, I think, are getting behind this. I asked them for 4 things. I wanted their recommendations to be meaningful, measurable, achievable, and affordable. and I think that the recommendations that they brought to us meet all of those goals. They have been laser focused on their charge. When I asked them a year ago to join this team, I told them, I think it'll take 3 or 4 months. They knew better, and they were very dedicated to making sure that they did their homework, that they read up, they understood what we had been doing, how the environment had changed in every sense of the word, and what it was that we could be doing. And they stayed focused on their charge of making recommendations for the next 3 to 5 years. They didn't go beyond that. And I really appreciate the fact that they looked at that and said, that's what we're supposed to do. That's exactly what we're going to do. And we're not going to go beyond what it is that we've been asked to do. I'm very impressed with the fact that one of their major goals was to partner with industry and our commercial partners, and helping them find ways to be more efficient. Scott, as you said, their energy usage may be the same, but their production may have gone up but the usage has stayed the same because they've become more efficient. And one of the things that I learned in this process is that our BPW reaches out to local industry and says, how can we help you be more efficient? And while that's a great green goal, that's an incredible profit-making goal for our local industry. And I think that that's something that people need to keep in mind. And when we're looking at things like the home energy retrofit program, the savings that the homeowner has in energy is not only a good green goal, that's a good economic goal. It's saving our people dollars that they can use to put toward college education for their kids. They can spend at local businesses. It's frankly just good for the economy. This is something, these recommendations, while we as a governmental entity can help along in the process, we can help create opportunities, we can help create on-ramps for folks. This is not a problem that the 9 of us sitting around this dais or the BPW or the city staff is going to be able to solve. It's going to take the buy-in and the partnership of our local industry, our commercial partners, and our residential partners. There's no way we're going to meet any of these goals unless the people of Holland, the industry of Holland, the businesses of Holland buy into this and recognize that there's advantage in this to them. And as been said twice now, I still love this. I love this quote. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. James Clear from Atomic Habits. I'm a fan of Mr. Clear. I'm a fan of his book, Atomic Habits. We have heard over the year about goals, about setting goals, about doing bold goals. Well, a goal doesn't do you any good if you do not have the systems in place to be able to help you achieve that goal. And I think, as Brian Pajot said last week, if you want to lose weight, you can set whatever goal you want. But if you're not getting the potato chips out of your cupboard, if you're not setting up a system to eat well and to exercise, you can have whatever goal you want, but you're not going to meet it unless you've got the systems in place to be able to do it. And what we learned tonight, just before these recommendations, were we've got some pretty good systems in place right now, and those systems aren't going away. We're just going to be adding to those systems. We do this well. This community is very good about doing this well, and we are continually trying to get better at what it is that we do. As with many things that we do in the City of Holland, we are trying to help our community members to save money, to increase their profit, to do things that make sense economically for the community because it's the right thing to do. And what we try to do here is make the right thing to do the easy thing to do. And some of the recommendations that are here are hopefully going to help our residents, our commercial partners, and our industrial partners save energy and make and save money in the process. So thank you again for the great recommendations, and I'm looking forward to the next steps with this because, Mike, as you said, this is not the end. This is the beginning of the next 3 years of this. And there are reporting goals, and so I'm going to ask the public to keep their eyes open as well, to listen to those reports that we get from our staff as how we are doing along the way, and then in 3 years, starting this process again. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin? Yes. Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Peters? Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. On to item 12, reports from boards, city offices, and commissions. 12C1, From the city attorney, lawsuit update, Sarah Sturkin Jackson versus Holland Police Department and City of Holland, Ottawa County Circuit Court case number 21-6536-CZ, adopt resolution to resolve pending lawsuit. Mr. Van Beek, and I was pointing directly at our city attorney, Ron Vanderveen. Mr. Vanderveen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So our report obviously addresses the lawsuit by Mrs. Sturkin Jackson against the city and the Holland Police Department. At the outset, we have to ask a question of council. Ms. Sturkin Jackson makes allegations in her complaint about communications between Chief Messer and elected officials. When asked who she's talking about, she refused to answer, saying disclosure of the identity of the elected officials would violate an attorney-client privilege. So why do I raise this at the outset here? I raise this because our legal ethics requirements prohibit us from talking to a party that is, or a person who is represented by counsel on a matter, and not knowing who she's talking about because she says she can't tell us, we have to ask if anybody considers her to be their attorney as to, I would describe it as racial bias complaints or otherwise related to this litigation, any tangential issues related to this litigation. And if so, then I think that you need to be recused. If not, we're ready to go forward.
Okay, Ron, I just want to, for clarification purposes, because, you know, as everybody here knows, I'm an attorney. I understand what it is that you just said. I'm not sure whether the public completely understands the rules that you're operating on. When you say we, you are an attorney that is representing the city of Holland.
Correct.
As an attorney, you're not allowed to communicate directly with someone who is represented by an attorney on the opposite side of a case, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so what you're saying is that the plaintiff in this case made a claim in one of the documents that she filed with the court, or an answer to a discovery request, that she believes that she represents someone who's an elected official in the city of Holland?
That appears to be what she's saying in her answer to discovery requests. Statements under oath that it would giving us the information, the identity, would violate an attorney-client privilege.
Okay, and that creates a problem for you if a member of this group is represented by Ms. Sturkin Jackson. That creates a difficulty for you in communicating to this body.
That's correct.
Okay.
And would really need that person to be recused for us to go forward with the presentation.
Okay, and so your question is anyone here being represented by Ms. Sturkin Jackson?
Correct.
Yeah, I can answer for myself, no.
I'll be glad to answer for myself, no.
I am not. No, that would be a no.
I am not.
Neither am I.
I am not.
I am not.
Okay. It's awkward to have to ask that question, but when she makes the allegations and then claims the privilege, we just don't know, and we have to be careful of that. All right, well, going forward, Ms. Sturkin Jackson made requests for documents under the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, as we call it, back in October 2020, primarily relating to racial bias complaints against the Holland Police Department. The city provided extensive documents, exempted some information from that, and that resulted in her filing suit in June against the city. Her complaint challenges the exemptions that were claimed, and I don't know that we need to get into the details of those exemptions right now, but also claiming that the city has covered up, and when I say the city, I mean the city and the Holland Police Department, asserting that they covered up and did not disclose complaints of racial bias against the Holland Police Department. And then her allegations also appear to allege racial bias in the Holland Police Department. We answered her complaint, denying the primary allegations in the complaint. Before the suit was filed, we had some communications, and we said to her, tell us what complaints you're talking about if you're claiming that they're undisclosed complaints, because we've searched for them. We've had the IT staff search, we've had police department search, we've reviewed their records, and she indicated that she would not. So once she filed suit, and we filed an answer, we demanded a reply to our answer, which is something that's allowed under the court rules, and she didn't provide a complete reply. to that. So we filed discovery requests that require her to produce documents or answer questions under oath about her allegations. And basically, one of the questions is, what evidence do you have to support your allegations in the complaint? And she came forward with no evidence. And so when we got to that point, we asked her to agree to her deposition in the case. A deposition is where we can question her under oath in person or by Zoom usually nowadays with a court reporter. And at that point, she then asked that we agree to let her dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice and without cause. With prejudice means that she can't refile that suit. Without costs means that the city could not pursue a claim for attorney fees or costs against Ms. Sturkin-Jackson upon dismissal. And so our recommendation is to have council authorize us to sign the stipulation to dismiss with prejudice and without costs. Glad to answer any questions along those lines.
Any questions from council members? Mike?
Ron, would you be so kind as to read the 5 pieces of your resolution at the end?
I can, and I want to emphasize it's not our resolution.
Well,
No,
the
I mean, we've been
resolution that
asked
was
to
presented, I'm sorry.
submit a resolution with directions from council. Yeah. So at the bottom of page 2, you're talking about at the now therefore section and going on to the, there's
Specific.
5 items, but I see there's 2 number 3 somehow. That's what you're talking about?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now therefore, the council for the city of Holland adopts the following resolution. Plaintiffs offer to dismiss the lawsuit, Sarah Sturkin-Jackson versus Holland Police Department and City of Holland, case number 21-6536 CZ, with prejudice and without costs or attorney fees, is accepted. The city attorney is directed to execute and file all necessary court documents to effectuate the requested dismissal as approved. That any citizen or visitor in the city of Holland that experiences an interaction that falls short of the city's core values and high expectations of service is encouraged to report this to the city. That any resolutions in effect that conflict with this resolution are rescinded, and then, of course, the vote on that. And I want to emphasize in response to number 3, the encouraging any complaints if there's inappropriate action. Those complaints can be made to the police department. They have a system in place to investigate and deal with those. There's an appeal process for that. Those complaints can be made to the city manager. They can be made to council, either in person or by writing, or to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. Any of those options are available for someone who has a complaint.
And also Esther Fifowski in the Human Relations Department.
Oh, yes, I forgot that one. That can be done here, too, locally at City Hall.
Okay. Any other questions from council members?
Your Honor?
Yes, Dave.
I would then move that we adopt the resolution with the stipulation that the correct numbers be attributed to the last 5 points.
Yeah, and there's a motion on the floor, and one of my recommendations was going to be that I wanted to read the entire resolution so that the public had the opportunity to hear all of that. So I'm going to do that at this point. Whereas the city and its police department are named as defendants in a pending lawsuit captioned as Sarah Sturkin-Jackson versus the Holland Police Department and City of Holland, case number 21-6536-CZ, the lawsuit, which is pending in the Ottawa County Circuit Court. Whereas the lawsuit filed on June 22, 2021, stems from Mrs. Sarah Sturkin-Jackson, the plaintiff's October 2020 Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, requests and the city's extensive responses thereto. Whereas plaintiff's complaint 1 alleges the applicability of certain FOIA exemptions asserted by the city, and 2 alleges that the city failed to disclose and covered up certain complaints of racial bias requested by the plaintiff, and 3 alleges that the police department is racially biased. Whereas the city has demanded that plaintiff file a reply to matters alleged in defendant's answer, but plaintiff has failed to provide a complete reply to the city's answer as required by court rule. Whereas the city has submitted discovery requests to plaintiff, requiring plaintiff to produce any evidence upon which the plaintiff will rely to support her asserted claims. Whereas plaintiff has failed to produce any supporting evidence in response to the discovery requests. Whereas the city administration, this city council, and the Department of Public Safety has and continues to recognize the historic, recent, and current national climate of unjust policing practices and is committed to training, policies, and culture of fair and impartial policing. Whereas the city administration and this city council have investigated plaintiffs' claims, including claims that the city failed to disclose additional records, and it is determined that there are no additional undisclosed records in the possession of the city, and that the city has fully complied with its obligations under FOIA. Whereas the city administration and this city council have determined that plaintiffs' claims of racial bias are unsubstantiated, and it has found no evidence that the police department is racially biased. Whereas this city council takes seriously its responsibility to hold the city's Department of Public Safety accountable to the highest standards of integrity, professionalism, compassion, dedication, equal treatment, and respect, those being the stated core values earned and repeatedly demonstrated by the Department of Public Safety itself. Whereas there has been no evidence produced in the context of plaintiff's lawsuit to question whether the Department of Public Safety is continuing to meet its high expectations of service. And whereas the city administration and this city council have reviewed and determined that there are other meritless allegations in plaintiff's lawsuit. And whereas plaintiff has proposed to dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice and without an award of costs or attorney's fees against plaintiff. Whereas the city council has reviewed plaintiff's request and the recommendations from the city administration and the city attorney and has determined that accepting plaintiff's offer to dismiss her lawsuit with prejudice and without costs and attorney's fees is in the best interests of the city. Now, therefore, the council for the city of Holland adopts the following resolution. 1, plaintiffs offer to dismiss the lawsuit Sarah Sturken Jackson versus Holland Police Department and City of Holland, case number 21-6536-CZ, with prejudice and without costs or attorney's fees, is accepted. 2, the city attorney is directed to execute and file all necessary court documents to effectuate the requested dismissal as approved. 3, that any citizen or visitor in the city of Holland that experiences an interaction that falls short of the city's core values and high expectations of service is encouraged to report this to the city. And 4, which is the second number 3, any resolutions in conflict with this resolution are rescinded. That is the motion that's on the floor. Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Hoekstra, support by Trethewey. Is there any discussion by council?
We do have.
Yeah, and I believe we do have something from Councilmember Byrd. Kathy, would you please read that?
In the past, I have made it clear that I support our Holland Police Department 100%. Today, I stand behind that just the same. We have had the opportunity to show with evidence to those who requested by way of reports, data, and video showing that the men and women who serve you and me hold themselves to a high standard. Am I saying they are flawless? Absolutely not. As Chief Messer has stated many times, there is always room for improvement. That is one of the reasons they are consistently training to be better. Am I saying that I believe we have the best police department in the state of Michigan and in the top percentile of the country? I absolutely am, and without hesitation. Their track record shows it. So it is without hesitation that I support them and support the following advice of the attorney. Quincy Byrd, Councilman at Large.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other discussion from council members? Yes, Raul.
Yeah, I mean, we've had several discussions, obviously, in closed session around this whole situation, and it's unfortunate that it had to unfold that we had to have it. At the same time, I think there's always silver lining. There's always an opportunity, right? As even Councilmember Byrd kind of iterated about Chief Messer's position, right? Always room for improvement. So there's always an opportunity, I think, to grow. And I think for me personally, as we dove into this information, my regards, my respect for our police department has only elevated. I think, I won't iterate or try to re-say what Councilmember Byrd just said, but yeah, my highest respects, and I think we've got bar none our top police department here in the city of Holland, and happy to support them in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Any other comments, discussion from council members? Mr. Trethewey.
It's not going to be any surprise at all that I am in full support of the recommendation of the city attorney. It's also no surprise at all that I have been an unwavering supporter of our public safety department. And I can say unwavering because it was brought into question in the recent past. I can say unwavering because, yeah, Quincy said it best. They're not flawless. They're humans, for crying out loud. But what makes the unwavering support is the fact that when there is an issue, they take care of it professionally. They take care of it exponentially, or fast. They take care of it and have a learning experience from that. I sit on the PCR board, the Police Community Relations Board, and I've said to Matt on numerous occasions that you have to get out in front of the public and tell him the proactive measures that you're doing with your officers. The brain study, the brain health study that they've just gone through, the LGBTQ training that they did. They were one of the few in the area that asked for a sergeant, I think it was a sergeant from the Detroit area, to come in and help them with their training. It has been consistently that way. Consistently. And yes, I can unwaveringly support our public safety. I have no question. They have never given me a reason not to. And they all know, whether it was Chief Kreidoff or Chief Messer, up until the time that they do, I will do that. And there's never been a question. Absolutely no question. So I'm with you, Raul, Councilmember Garcia, excuse me, that it's a shame that we had to come to this. That's the rights that individuals have in our great judicial system. But I'm glad that they're vindicated.
Thank you, Mr. Trethewey. Mr. Corbin?
Yes, I guess I would just like to say thank you to our law enforcement agency here in Holland. The professionalism that you have demonstrated, and specifically in support of council and the general public as a whole. I would also encourage, as our resolution states, is if you have or see a problem, report it. I mean, you have mechanisms to do that. And I'm sure with this department and the professionalism they have demonstrated over the years, they will continue to do the right thing and follow up on each and every one of those complaints. So again, for those who are watching, especially those officers in uniform, men and women, cadets, correctional, even our people go out and write tickets. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for your professionalism.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Any other discussion? Well, it's hard to add to what Mr. Byrd, Mr. Garcia, Mr. Trethewey, and Mr. Corbin said, but I too want to thank our Holland Police Department. I want to thank our staff. I want to thank our city attorneys. This is something that we have been dealing with for many months now. And I want to reiterate what Mr. Trethewey said about unwavering support of our police department. I wrote those words. I put pen to paper. I published those words with other council members' names underneath them as well. And the reason why I can have unwavering support of the police department is exactly what both Mr. Byrd, Mr. Garcia, Mr. Trethewey have said, which is because we know that if there is an issue, it will be dealt with. Are they perfect? No. No person is perfect. No institution is perfect. But they are dedicated to constant improvement. Each one of us up here has been elected to be an oversight board of every single department in the city. We are citizens that oversee the government in the city of Holland. We take that role very seriously. And as Mr. Garcia said, if there is one silver lining in this entire process, it is the fact that we have had the opportunity to look behind the curtain of what happens at the Holland Police Department, and I could not personally be more impressed with the department, with the people, with the policies, with the training. They are stellar. I'm proud to be their mayor. I'm proud to be the mayor of the people of the city of Holland, and I'm proud of every single police officer that wears a badge and protects each and every one of us every day. And it is a silver lining that we were able to look and show the world what an incredibly proficient, honorable, effective department we have. I will put them up against any other department anywhere in the world. Thank you to all of them, and thank you to staff, and thank you to our attorneys, and thank you to council. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Corbin?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Kathy. Next item on the agenda, item 13, communications from the city manager, Mr. Van Beek. You have 50 minutes.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Or 50 seconds, however you want to play that. Next, appointments, communications from the mayor. I have a number of appointments this evening. I got to get to that. I was expecting that you were going to have a report to give this evening, and so I was just going to wait a moment to get my report out there. You're very good. All right. I'm recommending in the form of a motion, I'm recommending to the City Council that they accept the appointment of Rebecca Shankweiler Brown to the International Relations Commission, term expiring June 30, 2024, and the reappointments of Ron Ralia and Utimio Tim Marakin to the Parks and Recreation Commission, terms expiring June 30, 2024.
Make that in the form of a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
I'm going to give that one to Arnshorst.
Oh.
Yeah. Councilor Arnshorst. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then I do have a mayoral proclamation this evening for Extra Mile Day, November 1, 2021. Whereas Holland, Michigan is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Holland, Michigan is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Holland, Michigan is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Holland, Michigan acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 550 extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1, 2021. Now, therefore, I, Nathan Box, Mayor of the City of Holland, Michigan, and members of the Holland City Council do hereby proclaim November 1, 2021 Extra Mile Day, and urge all residents to take the time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, and world a better place. Given under my hand and the seal of the City of Holland this 20th day of October, 2021. Nathan Box, Mayor of Holland, Michigan. Thank you. That is all that I have this evening. Next item is 15, appointments, motions, and communications from council members. Ms. Raymond.
Thank you. I wanted to thank, today I had the opportunity to attend the Diversity Forum that was sponsored by the County of Ottawa and the City of Holland. So thank you very much to the city staff, in particular Esther Fafelsky, who did a wonderful job working through the keynote speech this morning, there was a lot of really great information that was provided. In particular, the things that hit home for me was the work being done with the library and community action house, and the social workers who are working with the library staff and on 20 hours a week, just hanging out at the library and connecting with people and giving them resources. I very much appreciated that report. And then also, we've been talking about the police department, and one of the things that they have implemented recently is the CIT, Critical Incident Team. And this also has been enormously helpful to the folks who are working with people experiencing homelessness. They're very excited about that partnership and being able to connect with, working together with police officers, social workers, and mental health professionals. This is a partnership between the Holland Police Department, Zeeland, Ottawa County, Grand Haven too, yeah? And community mental health to really provide some great resources to people out there who are struggling. And so I just really want to thank in particular Chief Messer, because he was really the force behind that effort. So I just wanted to thank. There were several others who were at the forum today too. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lynn. Yes, Ms.
Yes.
Amshorst.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to again reference our upcoming elections on Tuesday, November 2, which is less than 2 weeks away. You may still register to vote, exercise your right and privilege to vote by coming to City Hall. If you're a resident of Holland, come to City Hall, bring your voter ID and proof of your address. And for all of you out there who still have your absentee ballots, you may bring them in anytime. Help make our city clerks and her staff their job a little easier, a little smoother on election day itself. So bring in those. There's a little ballot box out in the parking lot or one right inside the City Hall lobby. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. Yes,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Corbin.
Mr. Mayor. So for those in the 5th Ward, we have our quarterly meeting tomorrow evening from 6 to 7. We have Neighborhood Connectors. I can't remember the gentleman's name. Help me. Mark, yes. He's coming to speak to us about that for the first half hour, and then we'll kind of open up for the second half hour to talk about things in 5th Ward, anything that comes up. Certainly it's for 5th Ward, but anyone else is welcome to attend if they're interested in Neighborhood Connectors and how they work. We will be meeting at Maplewood Park, one of the shelter houses there, so feel free to come on out. Council members, you're welcome as well to come out if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Well, seeing none, we do not have any unfinished business. No first reading of ordinances. There's just one more motion I'll entertain at this point.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support? Support by Peters. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.